The Tradesman by Franz Kafka. Translated by Willa and Edwin Muir. It is possible that some people are sorry for me, but I am not aware of it. My small business fills me with worries that make my forehead and temples ache inside, yet without giving any prospect of relief, for my business is a small business. I have to spend hours beforehand making things ready, jogging the caretaker's memory, warning him about mistakes he is likely to commit, and puzzling out in one season of the year what the next season's fashions are to be, not such as are followed by the people I know, but those that will appeal to inaccessible peasants in the depths of the county. My money is in the hands of strangers. The state of their affairs must be a mystery to me. The ill luck that might overwhelm them I cannot foresee. How could I possibly avert it? Perhaps they are running into extravagance and giving a banquet in some inn garden. Some of them may be attending the banquet as a brief respite before their flight to America. When at the close of a working day I turn the key on my business and suddenly see before me hours in which I shall be able to do nothing to satisfy its never-ending demands, then the excitement which I drove far away from me in the morning comes back like a returning tide, but cannot be contained in me and sweeps me aimlessly away with it. And yet I can make no use of this impulse. I can only go home, for my face and hands are dirty and sweaty, my clothes are stained and dusty, my working cap is on my head, and my shoes are scratched with the nails of crates. I go home as if lifted on a wave, snapping the fingers of both hands and caress the hair of any children I meet. But the way is short. Soon I reach my house, open the door of the lift, and step in. I see that now of a sudden I am alone. Others who have to climb stairways tire a little as they climb, have to wait with quick, panting breath till someone opens the door of the flat, which gives them an excuse for being irritable and impatient, have to traverse the hallway where hats are hung up, and not until they go down a lobby past several glass doors and come into their own room are they alone. But I am alone in the lift, immediately, and on my knees gaze into the narrow looking-glass. As the lift begins to rise, I say, "Quiet now, back with you. Is it the shadow of the trees you want to make for, or behind the window curtains, or into the garden arbor?" I say that behind my teeth, and the staircase flows down past the opaque glass panes like running water. Fly, then. Let your wings, which I have never seen, carry you into the village hollow, or as far as Paris if that's where you want to go. But enjoy yourselves there. Looking out of the window, see the processions converging out of 3 streets at once, not giving way to each other, but marching through each other, and leaving the open space free again as their last ranks draw off. Wave your handkerchiefs, be indignant, be moved, acclaim the beautiful lady who drives past. Cross over the stream on the wooden bridge, nod to the children bathing, and gape at the hurrah rising from the 1,000 sailors on the distant battleship. Follow the trail of the inconspicuous little man, and when you have pushed him into a doorway, rob him, and then watch him, each with your hands in your pockets as he sadly goes his way along the left-hand street. The police dispersed on galloping horses rein in their mounts and thrust you back. Let them. The empty streets will dishearten them, I know. What did I tell you? They are riding away already in couples, slowly around the corners at full speed across the squares. Then I have to leave the lift, send it down again, and ring the bell, and the maid opens the door while I say, "Good evening." Hi there, welcome to No Extra Words, the Flash Fiction Podcast. My name is Chris Baker-Dersch. I'm your producer and editor. Today is episode 8, which is something of a bonus episode. All summer long we've been releasing every other week episodes with the goal of going to every week in the fall. So to follow our schedule, I had episode 7 all ready to be released while I was on vacation, had a technical glitch, and you got it early. So you actually got 2 episodes really close together and didn't want to leave a 4-week gap between episodes. So you are getting a bonus episode 8 that was not planned, which has been fun to put together. This was an episode I wanted to do, but wasn't planning to do this week, and it's been a good one. If you've been following our website at all, you know there's a challenge to the listeners currently going on. There's a writing prompt up there with a plea to create a short story around an iconic landmark. I am hoping to air that, but that will appear episode 9, which should be released August 19th. Today we are doing a public domain party featuring stories by authors of the 19th and early 20th centuries to show that flash fiction is not new. It is actually a format that's been around for some time in one way or another. Franz Kafka is actually known for his short stories. He's probably best known for his novel, The Metamorphosis, but he wrote a ton of these tiny little shorts in his life. It was actually really hard to pick a Kafka story. I went with The Tradesman for a number of reasons, one of which is that I had a really interesting conversation. I was interviewed for the review website. That's really hard to say, which is, that interview should be out soon. Michelle, who I was talking to, whose story you're actually going to hear in a couple of weeks, she asked about my feelings about vignettes when we were talking about microfiction. And I told her there are definitely flash fiction purists who believe if a story does not have a clear beginning, middle, and end, and plot points and a narrative arc, then it's not really a short story, it's a vignette. And I think the line's a lot more fluid than that between vignette and short story, especially in the world of flash fiction, which is so short. So if you look at The Tradesman, the plot arc of The Tradesman is pretty simple. Man is tired, closes his store, walks home, gets in the elevator, rides up. But what is going on in his head and in his life and through that journey is really what it's about. And that is what is actually moving the story forward. Is that plot or is it more of a vignette? I'm not sure, but I do know that it's a really great story and I love how well it resonates in 21st century life, although it was written quite a while ago. I was not in my research able to pinpoint an exact year it was written. A lot of Kafka's work was not published while he was still alive. He passed away in the 1920s. It was translated with a lot of other Kafka works in 1930 and probably was written sometime in the 19-teens or 1920s. The second author you're going to hear is actually a children's author from the 19th century, Juliana Horatia Ewing. And it's a very different story than Kafka. It is more of a parable. It is a children's story. But I actually love the way these stories play off of each other, being so of their time in such different ways. And so I'm putting them together. And I would love to hear from you all if that's a pairing that you found interesting or if it's a pairing that you found bizarre. I would be interested to know what the audience thinks of the combination of these two together. The story is I Won't. It was written in 1875 and originally published in a magazine for children. Just a little bit of podcast news before I get to the story. We are going to weekly episodes, so episode 9 will be out August 19th, and after that you should be able to look for a new episode of No Extra Words every week. Should be for the foreseeable future on Wednesdays. I'll let you know if there's a change in release date. But again, with podcasts, it doesn't really matter because you can get us whenever you want. Hope you stay in touch with us. We're at noextrawords.wordpress.com. Keep reading, keep writing. Have a great week. I Won't by Juliana Horatia Ewing. Don't care, so they say, fell into a goose pond, and I won't is apt to come to no better an end. At least my grandmother tells me that was how the miller had to quit his native town and leave the tip of his nose behind him. It all came of his being allowed to say I won't when he was quite a little boy. His mother thought he looked pretty when he was pouting, and that willfulness gave him an air which distinguished him from other people's children. And when she found out that his lower lip was becoming so big that it spoilt his beauty, and that his willfulness gained his way twice and stood in his way 8 times out of 10, it was too late to alter him. Then she said, "Dearest Abinadab, do be more obliging." And he replied, as she had taught him, "I won't." He always took what he could get, and would neither give nor give up to other people. This, he thought, was the way to get more out of life than one's neighbors. Amongst other things, he made a point of taking the middle of the footpath. "Will you allow me to pass you, sir? I am in a hurry," said a voice behind him one day. "I won't," said Abinadab, on which a poor washerwoman with her basket scrambled down into the road, and Abinadab chuckled. Next day he was walking as before. "Will you allow me to pass you, sir? I am in a hurry," said a voice behind him. "I won't," said Abinadab, on which he was knocked into the ditch, and the Baron walked on, and left him to get out of the mud on whichever side he liked. He quarrelled with his friends till he had none left, and he quarrelled with the tradesmen of the town till there was only one who would serve him, and this man offended him at last. "I'll show you who's master," said the miller. "I won't pay a penny of your bill. Not a penny." "Sir," said the tradesman, "my giving you offence now is no just reason why you should refuse to pay for what you have had and been satisfied with. I must beg you to pay me at once." "I won't," said the miller, "and what I say I mean. I won't, I tell you, I won't." So the tradesman summoned him before the justice, and the justice condemned him to pay the bill and the cost of the suit. "I won't," said the miller. So they put him in prison, and in prison he would have remained if his mother had not paid the money to obtain his release. By and by she died, and left him her blessing and some very good advice, which, as is sometimes the case with bequests, would have been more useful if it had come earlier. The miller's mother had taken a great deal of trouble off his hands, which now fell into them. She took in all the small bags of grist which the country folk brought to be ground, and kept account of them, and spoke civilly to the customers, big and little. But those small matters irritated the miller. "I may be the slave of all old women by the countryside," said he, "but I won't. They shall see that I won't." So he put up a notice to say that he would only receive grist at a certain hour on certain days. Now but a third of the old women could read the notice, and they did not attend to it. People came as before, but the miller locked the door of the mill, and sat in the counting-house and chuckled. "My good friend," said his neighbours, "you can't do business in this way. If a man lives by trade, he must serve his customers, and a miller must take in grist when it comes to the mill." "Others may if they please," said the miller, "but I won't. When I make a rule, I stick to it." "Take advice, man, or you'll be ruined," said his friends. "I won't," said the miller. In a few weeks all the country folk turned their donkeys' heads towards the windmill on the heath. It was a little further to go, but the windmiller took custom when it came to him, gave honest measure, and added civil words gratis. The other miller was ruined. "All you can do now is leave the mill while you can pay the rent and try another trade," said his friends. "I won't," said the miller. "Shall I be turned out of the house where I was born because the country folk are fools?" However, he could not pay the rent, and the landlord found another tenant. "You must quit," he said to the miller. "That I won't," said the miller, "not for 50 new tenants." So the landlord sent for the constables, and he was carried out, which is not a dignified way of changing one's residence. But then it is not easy to be obstinate and dignified at the same time. His wrath against the landlord knew no bounds. "Was there ever such a brute?" he cried. "Would any man of spirit hold his home at the whim of a landlord? I'll never rent another house as long as I live." "But you must live somewhere," said his friends. "I won't," said the miller. He was no longer a young man, and the new tenant pitied him. "The poor old fellow is out of his senses," he said, and he let him sleep in one of his barns. One of the mill cats found out there was a new warm bed in this barn, and she came and lived there too and kept away the mice. One night, however, Mrs. Pussy disturbed the miller's rest. She was in and out of the window constantly and meowed horribly into the bargain. "It seems a man can't even sleep in peace," said the miller. "If this happens again, you'll go into the mill race to sing to the fishes." The next night the cat was on the alert, and the following morning the miller tied a stone round her neck and threw her into the water. "Oh, spare the poor thing, there's a good soul," said a bystander. "I won't," said the miller. "I told her what would happen." When his back was turned, however, the bystander got Pussy out and took her home with him. Now the cat was away, the mice could play, and they played hide-and-seek over the miller's nightcap. It came to such a pass that there was no rest to be had. "I won't go to bed. I declare I won't," said the miller. So he sat up all night in an armchair, and threw everything he could lay his hands on at the corners where he heard the mice scuffling till the place was topsy-turvy. Towards morning he lit a candle and dressed himself. He was in a terrible humour, and when he began to shave his hands shook and he cut himself. The draughts made the flame of the candle unsteady too, and the shadow of the miller's nose, which was a large one, fell into uncertain shapes upon his cheeks and interfered with the progress of the razor. At first he thought he would wait until daylight, then his temper got the better of him. "I won't," he said, "I won't. Why should I?" So he began again. He held on by his nose to steady his cheeks, and he gave it such a spiteful pinch that the tears came into his eyes. "Matters have come to a pretty pass when a man's own nose is to stand in his light," said he. By and by a gust of wind came through the window. Up flared the candle, and the shadow of the miller's nose danced half over his face, and the razor gashed his chin. Transported with fury, he struck at it before he could think what he was doing. The razor was very sharp, and the tip of the miller's nose came off as clean as his whiskers. When daylight came, he saw himself in the glass, and he resolved to leave the place. "I won't stay here to be a laughing-stock," said he. As he trudged out on the highway with his bundle on his back, the baron met him and pitied him. He dismounted from his horse, and leading it up to the miller, he said, "Friend, you are elderly to be going far afoot. I will lend you my mare to take to your destination. When you are there, knot the reins and throw them on her shoulder, saying, 'Home!' She will then return to me. But mark one thing, she is not used to whip or spur. Humour her, and she will carry you well and safely." The miller mounted willingly enough and set forward. At first the mare was a little restive. The miller had no spurs on, but in spite of the baron's warning, he kicked her with his heels. On this she danced till the miller's hat and bundle flew right off and left, and he was very near to following them. "Ah, you vixen," he cried, "you think I'll humour you as the baron does, but I won't. No, you shall see that I won't." And gripping his walking-stick firmly in his hand, he belaboured the baron's mare as if she had been a donkey. On which she sent the miller clean over her head and cantered back to the castle, and wherever it was that he went to, he had to walk. He never returned to his native village, and everybody was glad to be rid of him. One must bear and forbear with his neighbours if he hopes to be regretted when he departs. But my grandmother says that long after the mill had fallen into ruin, the story was told as a warning to wilful children of the miller, who cut off his nose to spite his own face.